Welcome. Today you will complete a 30-minute webinar that aims to educate university students and new professionals on a variety of important topics related to child and adolescent development. Education on these topics could help adults garner a greater understanding of how children and adolescents typically develop. Please click the arrow to go to the next slide. Some might find the discussion of this topic upsetting. If you feel distressed after completing this study and would like assistance, please contact the following providers. Counseling and Psychological Services is a mental health clinic for students located on UNL's campus. The Psychological Consultation Center is a mental health clinic for community members, including students, located on UNL's campus. Finally, Voices of Hope is a service provider for those who have experienced relationship violence, sexual assault, and related forms of abuse. You can reach Voices of Hope staff on their office line or through a 24-hour crisis line. You can also find links to these providers by clicking the word Resources located near the upper right part of the screen. Please click the arrow to go to the next slide. The primary purpose of this training is to educate students and new professionals from an array of disciplines to increase their knowledge of child and adolescent development. The following information is broad enough that professionals from many disciplines, as well as any adult, can apply it when working and interacting with children and families. However, the information provided is not intended to be comprehensive and will not cover all aspects related to child and adolescent development. Specifically, the current training is not aiming to be an assessment or diagnostic tool for determining if a child is moving through developmental milestones in a normative way. Other online and in-person resources are available if you are interested. Overall, equipped with proper training in child and adolescent development, including the information provided today, it is our belief that those interacting with youth and their parents in any capacity have the opportunity to better provide positive support. There are many benefits to completing this training, but you may ask yourself, does this training really apply to me? The answer is yes. This training applies to everyone. If you plan to work at a job, volunteer position, or practicum placement with youth or with adults who are parents to youth, this information applies to you. Training may especially benefit those who plan to go into a profession where interaction with children and adolescents or parents is common. For example, a mental health, social work, psychology, or helping profession, such as mental health practitioners, social workers, or counseling school and clinical psychologists, as well as anyone working in a religious or faith-based organization, those who plan to go into a medical profession, such as nurses, physicians, physician's assistants, and other general health professionals, those who plan to go into education, such as teachers and childcare workers, those who plan to go into law enforcement, as well as those in a legal profession, such as attorneys, paralegals, or legal aides. This training may also benefit those from other professions not described here. Additionally, outside of the mentioned professions above, many people at some point in their lives will encounter children, whether it be their own children, friends' children, neighbors, or family members. Therefore, even if you do not plan to go into any of these professions, the following information could be beneficial for you and applied in non-professional settings. To reach the goal of providing information to improve the knowledge set of those who encounter children and adolescents, you will receive information on cognitive, emotional, social, and sexual development of children and adolescents. The information will be presented in a lifespan approach, meaning we will first discuss young children ages 0 to 2, then we will discuss children ages 3 to 7 years old, then we will cover pre-adolescence, then we will discuss adolescent development. The lifespan approach also emphasizes how events and processes that occur in early development can influence later development. As mentioned, in addition to learning about cognitive, emotional, and social development, we will discuss child and adolescent sexual development. Consistent with discussing sexual development through the lifespan, at the end of the webinar, skills for talking to children and adolescents about sex will be covered. Throughout this training, it is our goal to promote and empower all adults and all professionals to be a positive support for children, adolescents, and their parents or caregivers. Knowledge in child and adolescent development could help you provide this positive support. Before we begin, while the material has been broken into seemingly distinct periods of development, for example, ages 0 to 2, ages 3 to 7, in this presentation there are no set periods of development. Researchers tend to group individuals by ages to study them. However, development is considered continuous. We will begin by discussing development in infancy and young toddlerhood. First, cognitive development refers to an individual's mental and intellectual processes. As you'll see, cognitive, emotional, social, and sexual development are all interrelated. While infants' cognitive abilities are more limited than other individuals, research shows that infants can imitate others. They are particularly likely to imitate adults' goal-directed behavior. They can also notice people's intentions, categorize objects, and understand the permanence of objects. Specifically, we'll spotlight the concept of object permanence, which is the idea that an object still exists when you cannot see it. Very young infants develop object permanence over time. Of note, brain growth and maturation contribute to cognitive development. Thus, changes in the brain impact cognitions, emotions, and behaviors. In addition, interactions with the outside world as well as one's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors influence changes in the brain. Therefore, just as the brain impacts thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, these thoughts, emotions, and behaviors impact the brain. Emotional development refers to the ability to identify and understand one's feelings, identify and understand others' feelings, manage emotions, and regulate behavioral responses to emotions. The ongoing development of these emotional abilities are significant for functioning, including creating and maintaining social relationships. Emotional displays of distress are shown in infants when they cry because they are hungry or uncomfortable. Also, infants experience positive emotions when fed, held by a parent, and soothed. Early on, infants are unable to regulate or control the expression of overwhelming emotions. They have some abilities, although limited, to manage their emotions when attending to or focusing on something. In many ways, emotional development and social development are intertwined and thus sometimes called social emotional development. Emotions are also interrelated to cognitions and behaviors. Regarding social development, infants are biologically equipped for social communication. Infants enjoy looking at human faces and are comforted by touch. Further, rapid development of the brain during infancy further prepares the very young for social interaction, including the ability to imitate and understand others. Of note, appropriate parental responsiveness to the needs of infants and young children predicts positive social, emotional, and cognitive or intellectual development. Some aspects of sexual response are present from birth. Thus, some forms of sexual behavior in young children are part of normal development. For example, it is common for young children to touch their own private parts. Also, masturbation and pelvic thrusting are observed in infants and toddlers. Typically, this occurs by rubbing or thrusting against a soft object, such as a pillow, blanket, stuffed animal, or doll. Showing one's private parts to others and some curiosity about private parts is also seen in this age group. For some parents, these behaviors may not be recognized as aspects of sexual development and therefore go unacknowledged. Because very young children, like infants, do not have the language skills for communication, much of what is known about young childhood sexual development is based on parent report of child behavior and adult recollections of childhood experiences. Additionally, warmth, nurturance, and appropriate physical affection from parents at a young age, for example being held and hugged by parents, can have positive implications for intimate relationships and expressions of affection in adulthood. Next, we'll discuss development in children aged 3 through 7 years old. During preschool and early schooling, children experience rapid improvements in executive functioning, which are the cognitive processes that underlie goal-directed behavior. Executive functioning includes things such as inhibition or self-control, working memory, and shifting between roles and tasks, or attentional flexibility. Children in preschool can begin to inhibit their behaviors and show large improvements in inhibition skills by age 8. Performance in working memory and shifting tasks also tends to improve in preschool through adolescence. In summary, while skills in executive functioning, self-control, memory begin to develop shortly after birth, ages 3 to 5 represent a window of opportunity for dramatic growth in executive functioning skills. Of course, executive functioning continues to develop through adolescence and early adulthood. The emotionality of children aged 3 to 7 tends to be much more complex than infants. Preschool children begin to interpret their own experiences, begin to learn about the ranges in emotions, and are better able to manage their emotions. Towards the end of preschool, children with a good emotional foundation have the ability to anticipate their own and others' emotions, talk about their own and others' emotions, and use their awareness of emotions to navigate social interactions. By the end of preschool years and during early schooling, children may report feeling more complex emotions such as embarrassment, pride, guilt, and shame. Also, young children can feel emotions quite deeply and intensely. For example, they can feel strong emotions of sadness, grief, anger, anxiety, and happiness. Developing language abilities allow children to communicate their feelings to others. Of note, emotion regulation is highly interrelated to executive functioning and problem-solving abilities. Further, children's ability to recognize and manage their emotions are extremely important to social functioning. Teachers' and peers' perceptions of a child's social abilities are often determined by that child's emotion recognition abilities. Further, these abilities associate with how well-liked a child may be in their classroom. For example, kids prefer others who aren't constantly upset. Some see emotional abilities as a foundation for current and future social competence and social skills. Finally, because the child's environment can play an important role in the development of cognitive, emotional, and social abilities, adults interacting with children should be supportive, caring, engaging, and protective. Some forms of sexual behavior in children 3 to 7 years old continue to be a part of normal development. For example, curiosity about the opposite sex's private parts is typical. Children may learn that their genitals are different than other parts of their body and that they are private and covered. The bathing suit rule may be taught to children to show how private parts are the parts of their body covered by the swimsuit. Also, exploratory play such as playing doctor or playing house with others of the same age is common. Engagement in masturbation may continue, though this is typically done in private. The frequency of observed sexual behaviors, for example touching one's private parts, showing others one's private parts in masturbation, tends to peak around age 5 and then declines. However, this decline of observed sexual behaviors is likely because children begin to engage in sexual behaviors privately. Brains continue to mature through pre-adolescence, though it's believed that there is a less dramatic growth of executive functioning skills during this time. For example, studies appear to show modest improvement and refinements in self-control skills during this age range. Performance on working memory tasks and the ability to shift between tasks and roles continues to increase. During this age range, children can generally make a distinction between the genuine expression of emotions with close friends and more managed displays of emotions with others. For example, pre-adolescents may share their emotions of joy, sadness, or anxiety in depth with friends, but they may not display these genuine emotions with teachers or less familiar peers. Also, pre-adolescents have an increased ability to problem solve, including the ability to generate several potential solutions for managing negative emotions. More so than earlier in development, those in pre-adolescence tend to have better understanding of reality, meaning they have more realistic thoughts and behaviors. They also have increasing abilities to accurately evaluate how much control they have during stressful situations. Further, in regards to social development, the function of friendship changes through normative development. For example, friends during adolescence begin to serve different purposes compared to friends in earlier childhood. Friends increasingly serve to help form one's identity, with this especially true into adolescence. Even during the late school age and middle school years, children's conception and understanding of friendship changes through development. In ages 10 through 11, friends are those who have similar values and roles. Friends are expected to be loyal to each other. In ages 11 to 13, friends tend to be those who have similar interests. They attempt to understand each other, and friends engage in more personal self-disclosure. Typically, around the age of 8 or 9, there is a noticeable tendency for males and females to play separately from one another, such that males primarily spend time with other males and females tend to spend time around other females. Despite this, romantic interest in the other gender may occur. During pre-adolescence, curiosity regarding sexual matters remains high. Therefore, youth in this age range tend to question matters of reproduction and sexuality and may seek out answers to their many questions. Many 10 and 11-year-olds are very interested in how their bodies will change with puberty, including how aspects related to their genitals will change and how their secondary sex characteristics will develop. Secondary sex characteristics are physical attributes which change during puberty, but which aren't directly tied to reproduction. For example, these include pubic and underarm hair growth, breast development in females, and facial hair growth in males. These physical changes that will occur in puberty are often anticipated. Engagement in masturbation is common. Children in this age range may engage in consensual sexual activities with peers, for example, kissing, sexual touching, and beyond. Developmentally appropriate sex play with friends of the same sex is common, particularly because of the separation between genders. Same-sex activity is likely more common than a heterosexual activity in this age range. Many times, these same-sex encounters in preadolescence are replaced by heterosexual activities in adolescence. Same-sex experiences in childhood infrequently play a determining role in establishing one's sexual orientation, though for some, sex play with friends of the same gender does reflect an attraction to members of that same sex, and this orientation may more fully develop in adolescence and adulthood. Across the age periods discussed so far, you can see that some sexual behaviors are a part of normal development. However, some sexual behaviors might raise concern and be problematic. These behaviors are often called sexual behavior problems. Some examples include sexual behaviors which involve coercion, tricks, or threats, sexual behaviors which involve aggression or injury. So sexual behaviors are of concern when they cause physical or emotional harm to others. A child's sexual behavior should not be negatively affecting other children. Also, sexual behaviors are of concern when they cause physical or emotional harm to the self. For example, physical harm to oneself may include touching oneself to the point where one's private parts are sore or hurt. Therefore, it may be concerning when sexual behaviors are associated with anger, distress, or strong negative emotions, or when sexual behaviors occur with other physically aggressive behaviors. More examples of problematic sexual behaviors include sexual behaviors between children of significantly different ages or developmental abilities, for example, a 12-year-old engaging in behaviors with a 6-year-old. This also includes sexual behaviors which do not change following parental redirection, intervention, or appropriate discipline. This may look like a child who is unable to stop themselves even when a parent redirects them. Also, the frequency of sexual behaviors is important. If a child is frequently engaging in sexual behaviors and the behaviors are persistent, then they may be of concern. Also, if the behaviors are increasing in their frequency, intensity, or invasiveness, these behaviors may be a problem. Some less common sexual behaviors that may be problematic include a child asking adults or peers to engage in sexual acts with them, inserting an object into one's private parts, or touching animals' genitals. Overall, it's important for adults to understand normal sexual development of children. Anytime a child is engaging in sexual behaviors not within normal development or engaging in sexual behaviors typical of an adult, the child may be engaging in problematic sexual behaviors. Professional support, like therapeutic intervention, may be needed for children who exhibit sexual behavior problems. In the progression towards adolescence, puberty is a major developmental milestone. On average, female puberty begins at age 10 or 11, though puberty may come before or after this average range. In the U.S., approximately 15% of females enter puberty by age 7. Females experience the following changes: breast development, growth of pubic and underarm hair, increased acne, growth spurt, labia, clitoris, and uterus enlarges, vaginal walls thicken, body contours round. During puberty, females experience menarche, or their first menstrual period. Most females experience their first menstrual period at age 12 or 13. However, there is considerable variation in the age of a female experiences menarche. Males typically experience puberty later than females. On average, males enter puberty around age 12, though puberty may come before or after this age. Males experience the following changes: deepening of voice, growth of facial, body, and pubic hair, increased acne, growth spurt, increased muscularity, penis, testes, and scrotum increase in size. Also, while males can experience orgasm before puberty, first ejaculation occurs during the pubertal stage. Adolescence is often seen as a transition from childhood to adulthood in Western cultures. Puberty leads to changes in physical development, and adolescents start to physically look similar to adults, for example, facial hair on males. However, cognitive development lags behind physical development. Therefore, adolescents may physically look like adults, but they do not have the advanced cognitive abilities in decision-making, planning, and impulse control adults tend to have. This mismatch can cause conflict when one expects an individual who is just a teenager but who looks like an adult to act like an adult. Adolescents tend to be more impulsive and more focused on short-term consequences rather than long-term consequences. Executive functioning does not fully develop until late adolescence or early adulthood. There is evidence of a regression or decrease in self-regulation abilities during adolescence. Particularly, adolescents commonly engage in increased risky behavior. However, compared to pre-adolescents, adolescents are faced with riskier, more emotionally charged situations, like driving, dating, and exposure to drugs and alcohol. Thus, because their self-regulation abilities are not fully matured, they act in ways that look like there's a decrease in abilities. Peers become increasingly important to adolescents, which then influence their social development and social functioning. Susceptibility to peer pressure tends to increase until approximately age 14, then resistance to peer pressure begins to increase at age 14. Thus, conformity to peers tends to be higher during early adolescence. Further, emotional development ties closely to social development, with many adolescents becoming increasingly aware of how emotions and the communication of emotions impact social relationships. Regarding sexual development, many adolescents masturbate. By age 19, it is approximated that 86% of males and 66% of females have masturbated. Compared to earlier stages of development, the frequency of masturbation tends to increase. In adolescence, sexual behaviors such as kissing, genital touching, and oral sex may occur. Recent studies have found that rates of oral sex are increasing in this age group, perhaps because oral sex is believed to be more acceptable and less risky, though sexually transmitted infections can be spread through oral sex. Sexual intercourse is also a sexual behavior that may occur in adolescence. Engagement in sexual intercourse is associated with the output of sex hormones, curiosity, the feeling of being ready, wanting to express love and affection, as well as pressure from peers and dating partners. Same-sex behavior may occur in adolescence. One large study found that 1 in 10 adolescents reported same-sex sexual contact. These behaviors may or may not be expressions of same-sex or bisexual orientation. Now we will transition to discussing skills for talking to kids about sex. The following information should not be considered an end-all be-all when it comes to discussing sex with children. However, we hope this information helps start a conversation about how you might decide to speak about sex to children with whom you interact. This may be as a parent, or through a personal relationship with a child, or through professional interaction with a child, for example, as a therapist or healthcare professional. Because many people feel uncomfortable discussing issues related to sex, we hope the following discussion is helpful in eliciting ideas about your own beliefs about how to talk to children about sex. Starting early can increase openness and communication about sexual matters and provides an atmosphere where a child may feel more comfortable coming to you with questions. Also, be prepared if a child brings questions to you at an early age. Studies have shown that by age 4, many children begin asking questions about where babies come from. Putting off an answer can halt communication. Also, you may find that beginning a dialogue about sex during pre-adolescence and adolescence without any foundation laid in earlier development can be very awkward and uncomfortable. Thus, discussing issues related to sex during day-to-day interactions, particularly when issues related to sex are naturally observed, like a child learns or sees that a family friend is pregnant, can feel more effortless. Use language consistent with the child's developmental level and cognitive abilities. Young children have difficulty understanding abstract concepts and will likely not fully grasp the complex physiology and biological processes of sex and conception. Therefore, discussing the basics in a developmentally appropriate way may be most helpful for young children. With that said, though, many experts suggest using anatomically correct names for the genitals, such as using the correct names for the penis and vagina. This is suggested for many reasons, including that it can enhance self-confidence, body image, and communication, and overall can help avoid confusion. Broadly, answering questions directly can be helpful. Following providing an answer to a question a child has, you may decide to check to see if the child understood your answer. Also, let them know you're open to answering more questions. In particular, it can be beneficial to discuss the changes that will happen in puberty before they actually happen. Changes that occur in puberty, such as the first menstrual period or first ejaculation, can be shocking and frightening if one is unprepared. Also, waiting to discuss these issues until pre-adolescence and adolescence may have some negative repercussions, in that it's likely that children at this age have already received potentially inaccurate information about sex from peers. It's okay to be open with children about your discomfort or uneasiness discussing these topics, though you may also share the importance of these discussions despite the discomfort that may be had. Thus, willingness to discuss issues of sexuality tends to be important for creating a more open dialogue. In addition to discussing puberty and sex, it is also important to discuss healthy relationships and dating, including what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like. Of note, as a parent to a child, it's good to share your own values about sex. Parental values can play an important role in an adolescent's sexual decision-making. In fact, positive parent-adolescent communication about sex has been linked to decreased risk of contracting sexually transmitted infections, more effective and consistent use of birth control, and decreased incidence of teenage pregnancies. Though it's important to also note that if a parent feels unable to do so, or if a child prefers to talk with another person, it can be helpful to have another trusted adult in a child's life with whom the child can discuss sex. This could be a therapist, physician, caseworker, uncle, aunt, or grandparent. In review, we hope you learned about the cognitive, emotional, social, and sexual development of children and adolescents. Ages discussed included ages 0 to 2, ages 3 to 7 years old, pre-adolescents, and adolescents. We also hope you learned some skills for talking to children and adolescents about sex. Throughout this training, it was our goal to promote and empower all adults and all professionals to be a positive support for children, adolescents, and their parents or caregivers. Knowledge in child and adolescent development could help you provide this positive support. We hope you found this information valuable. Please click the arrow to go to the next page. To finish the remainder of this study, exit this window and return to the Qualtrics survey.